Alright guys, the video I posted yesterday of the DOD delete modification had raised some questions by some of you guys, and so I thought I would go into some more detail on what's going on. In 2005, in the Trailblazer SS and some of the front-wheel drive 5.3 versions, and then in 07 in most of the truck line, GM introduced the DOD, which is displacement on demand, which what it does is the computer senses the amount of throttle required at like a steady idle or whatever, like on the highway, and it cuts cylinders out, effectively making a V8 into a V4. And if you look at this block here, you'll see that on number 1, number 4, number 6, and number 8, they have these bosses, which through the top cover directs oil flow down these holes to these style lifters right here. See, a regular lifter looks like this, and the DOD lifter looks like this. And through oil pressure, it deactivates this lifter and makes it shut the valves on that cylinder, and then the computer cuts sparking fuel off to that cylinder, and so it effectively kills 4 of the cylinders and turns it from a V8 to a V4. Part of the system is a single bolt cam, and that cam bolt has oil pressure fed through it, and all this stuff makes the DOD system work. The system, especially when a motor gets a bunch of miles on it or hasn't had regular oil changes, will clog up and cause, it's initially started out by valve ticking, and then it's misfire and a breakdown of the DOD system. And then a lot of guys will they just want to eliminate the DOD system so they can run a performance cam. But so the modifications that I was talking about doing, the threading of these oil bosses right here, was one step to deleting the DOD. Another step you have to do to delete DOD is change these lifters out and replace and make all the lifters like the standard non-DOD lifter. That's the first part of it. And then you have to change out the DOD cam and go to either a stock cam or a performance cam. Now this is a stock non-DOD 5.3 cam here. It could be a 6-liter. I don't know. I've changed both of them out. But it's actually a 3-bolt cam. But I mean, immaterial of that, the cam doesn't have the same profile because it doesn't have the DOD system on it. So that's part of the system you change. You have to put a non-DOD cam in there, the regular lifters, and then stop the oil flowing through these holes right here somewhere or another. Some of the kits just have a plug that you tap down in like a freeze plug that's an expansion fit. Or you can run a non-DOD cover, which has an O-ring that seals these passages off. You can see where the stock DOD covers O-ring sealed on a couple places on this motor here. But a more permanent solution, because if one of them O-rings cracks, then you'll lose oil pressure through here. And I don't know if you've watched my channel at all, you'll know These oil pumps have a pickup tube that bolts in the bottom of them. And the O-ring that seals the pickup tube, this hole right here, will crack and make it lose oil pressure. When the oil comes out the pump and goes through the cam journals, and so the first indication of oil pressure problem on one of these motors is noisy lifters. Another side effect of the oil pressure drop is worn cam bearings. So whenever I freshen one of these motors up, I always put cam bearings in them, and y'all have seen that a few times. But this is a 2011 model motor. So the only early motors like 05 is the Trailblazer SS and the front wheel drive motors. And like I said, the regular truck line in 07, I'm pretty sure got all of those motors got this DOD system. But the non-DOD motors, the valley cover looks like this. It doesn't have those bosses in it. The NOx sensors, those are NOx sensors right there, where they thread in the top of the block. On the DOD system motors, it uses a different NOx sensor, and it bolts in the side of the block like the old school small blocks NOx sensors back in the day. And also the DOD system on the Gen 4s runs a different computer system. Now, a lot of this stuff is interchangeable. On this Gen 1 and the early Gen 3 and the early Gen 4s, they run a cam position sensor, which is what this hole is. And the cam, that's the sensor ring right there. Now, some late model cams, like a LS9 cam, doesn't have this sensor ring. And so what it does is it picks up the cam sensor. That's that mark on that's the raised part on this timing gear right here, is for the cam sensor. And it runs a LS2 style cover that's got the cam sensor in the cover. So when I upgrade this motor and delete the DOD, I'll run an aftermarket cam, and I'll run, because it doesn't have a rear mount cam sensor, I'll run this LS2 style cam gear and the LS2 timing cover, which has got the sensor in the cover. And then all new lifters, and that will totally delete the DOD system and plus give me a performance cam. Another thing that you should know about the difference between the Gen 3 and Gen 4 first series and the second series Gen 4s is they have a different reluctor wheel on the crank. And what that does, these motors are distributorless ignition. That means that they have a coil per cylinder. In order for that system to work, because you don't have a mechanical connection between your ignition system and the cam and the crank, as in a small block Chevrolet, where the distributor gear meshes with a cam gear, and that tells the distributor where in relationship to the cam and the crank are hooked together with a timing chain, so that tells all the stuff how to work together. Well, on these distributorless ignition motors, you got the cam position sensor and you got a crank position sensor. The early model Gen 3 motors and the Gen 3 motors and the early model Gen 4 motors, they run what they call a 24-tooth reluctor wheel, which is the wheel that goes on the crank, and you can see it right here. It has 24 teeth on it. The cool part about it is GM coded this, so the black connector on the crank position sensor matches to the 24-tooth wheel. The later model Gen 4s, they run a gray connector, and the reluctor wheel is a 58 tooth wheel. And in addition, the cam position sensor is matched to the 24 or 58. Like, this is a 24 tooth reluctor wheel cam gear with this mark right here. On the 58 tooth reluctor wheel motor, the cam gear, now this is the one out this motor that had the DOD in it, but it still has the same style. And it has, this is the crank position sensor wheel right here, and it's got 4 positions instead of just that one. So this is a different cam position sensor that matches up with the 58 reluctor wheel. So those won't interchange. If you got a 58 reluctor wheel crank sensor, you need this kind of cam sensor. And you can tell that by the, without taking the pan off, you can tell that by the color of the crank position sensor, which is gray. And like I said, it's black in the 24 tooth wheel. But that's the biggest difference in these early Gen 4s and the Gen 3s versus the later Gen 4s and newer motors. So I hope that cleared up a little bit of some stuff. If you got any questions to ask, I might do another video with some more differences between the Gen 3, Gen 4, early and late motors. But that right there is my explanation of the DOD system. Thank you.